You're tuned in to Cutscene Confidential.
Everybody, welcome back to the second episode of Cutscene Confidential. I'm joined by my very good friend, Joey Lawson. He is a visual effects artist working in industry right now, and we're gonna kind of discover how he does what he does. Joey, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a nice rainy day up here in Oregon.
Oh yeah, it's actually been clear down here in Eugene.
Really?
Yeah, no, we had some sun a little bit ago.
Oh wow, yeah. Wish we could share a little bit. I could use a little sun and.
No, I want the sun all to myself. It's
Oh
all mine
man.
now. It's all mine. Yeah. So, what you been up to lately? You been working on any cool projects? Fill me in on the skinny.
Yeah, I've been working a lot. It's been actually one of the busiest months that I've had in a long time. Last year was actually a little more challenging because of the strikes.
Mm.
We felt the impact across the industry. There was very limited work. I
Oh
was able
wow.
to keep going, but this year it just kind of picked up rapidly at the beginning of the year. One time I had about 4 projects going on at the same time. Granted, I bit off a little more than I could chew there. Ended up doing it, but it was definitely a lesson in you know knowing your limits and
Hmm.
not pushing too far.
Yeah, those were a few things I actually wanted to talk to you about. I know the visual effects industry has undergone some stress recently. I know that based on what I've read, a lot of visual effects studios and houses are kind of overworked. Would you say that's a valid assessment, or what's your take?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid assessment. The visual effects industry in general has always kind of been the last thought of the film industry. It's the classic fix it in post. You think about it last, and it's just one of those things where the expectations are pretty high, are really high, and oftentimes the budgets or the timelines don't account for that.
Mm.
So you kind of have this place where everybody needs to work to get the job done, but they don't have the time or the resources sometimes to make it the way that they expect. But the
Mm.
hardest part is when producers, directors, creatives change things. They
Mm.
can't impart a clear vision, and suddenly you're going through different iterations of shots. And there are some shows that get upwards of like hundreds of versions of the same shot because they just keep tweaking and changing things.
Wow.
I think the most that I've gotten to this year has been 17 versions, and it's a big shot, so there's a lot to do on it. But it's
Mm.
still one of those things. It's like you know all of that time that we're spend working on one shot is time that's taking away from others, and so
Mm.
that can add up really quickly. And a lot of times, you have to work weekends, you have to work evenings, and it's difficult sometimes, without a doubt, depending on who the client is.
Mm. So yeah, that expectation part, I imagine you say it's kind of the last stop in the production of a film. What are some of these changes that these directors, producers are asking you to make?
It depends. A lot of times the changes that we welcome, we understand, are things like, does is it important for the story? For example, if there's if we do a shot a certain way and we have the car turning left in our animation, but then the next shot it's coming on off of the left on the right side, you know, that's something we need to change, and that's totally cool. We missed that. Or if it's a tech fix, if it's a problem that's like
Hmm.
uh we accidentally put uh let's just say a pink telephone pole in a shot. Something accidentally didn't
Right.
have a red texture on it. We need to fix that. Sometimes it's like little tweaks, little tiny changes that we can do. um but a lot of times, when it's frustrating, when it's difficult, is when there's a creative change.
Hmm.
And a creative change would be something like, I suddenly don't like these tents over here. I think I need fewer tents. Or can we move the tents over here and make them brown
Hmm.
instead of beige? And that's actually a note that we got on that version of the shot with 17 versions so far.
Oh my God.
And
It was
it's
just
like,
changing tense.
yeah, I mean, we literally went back. I think we call them matte paintings. It's
Hmm.
basically like a full, somebody does, we do a whole like assembly of a frame that it makes it a set extension. We went through at least 4 versions of that, and then 17 versions in total of the compositing, everything else in it. So uh, it still has not been approved. We're
Wow.
waiting on review on that shot.
So is it kind of like you kick it back and forth? Like you send them like your first cut, and you're like, "Hey, how does this look?" And then they'll send you a few tweaks, or they're like, "No, this is good," and it's just kind of back and forth like that, or is it like they're constantly calling up like, "Hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. This needs to be changed. I want this differently." What's that
Uh,
like?
it's definitely the former. It's usually we send our shots for review. So we'll package up, however many shots and previews we have done for the day.
Mm,
We'll send them to the client. The client will. I mean, we do an internal review process, and we'll just check and catch if there's anything like glaring that we think the client might, call out.
mm,
Then we'll send it to the client. We usually wait a day or two, sometimes a couple days, and then they come back with what we call notes, and those
mm.
notes are the changes. And then we'll create a new version. We'll do version 1, version 2, version 3, going from there.
Oh
And
wow.
fun fact, we always do. You can tell who's worked in the industry for a long time if their version numbers are V0003, or sorry, V003 or something like that.
Right.
You have to have a couple digits beforehand
Hmm.
because sometimes you can go over the
Right.
tens. So
Yeah.
not
I
just V1,
bet.
V2, V3.
Right. And so you're still waiting on that version with like 17 different cuts of that. You're still
Yeah.
waiting on that approval.
Hmm.
Does it usually take a long time to get that like final signature being like, okay, this is good, you can move on to the next thing? Or is there like a different kind of production timeline?
It depends on the client. In this instance, it's difficult because the director we're working with has trouble like giving across what his vision is.
Mm,
And it's also difficult because sometimes there are multiple people that it has to go through the review process.
mm-hmm.
There's the film that won the visual effects Oscar, I think in 2023. The Godzilla, what is it like zero
Yeah, Godzilla
something like
Zero.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one won. One of the reasons it did so good, they had a small crew, limited budget and everything, but they streamlined the review process by having the director working directly with and sitting in with the visual effects people.
Very
And that
nice.
made it so that he was the one giving the feedback. So if he says, "Oh, I want Godzilla to be taller in this shot," it's exactly what he wants, and you can address
Mm-hmm.
it. Versus in if you're doing, sometimes in some of the pipelines we have, we'll have the director saying, "I want him to be taller," and then there'll be a producer that overrides the note being like, "Actually, he needs to be shorter and his scales need to be a little more green here." And
Mm,
suddenly you have, and it's always hard when these conflicting sides, they sometimes conflict, and sometimes you'll get a sign off from the director, but then the producer won't approve it.
wow.
So it's important to try to streamline those where we can, and we usually do our best. Uh, and we're running up on, especially when you're running up on a deadline. It's like you have to eventually, know when to say, "Okay, the shot's approved. Let's move on to the
Mm-hmm.
next." Prioritize that way.
Is it kind of like a too many cooks in the kitchen type deal? Or is it more, it's just having that presence, having that person there on site makes it easier?
I think it's a little bit of both. When they're on site and when you're working directly with a team, which is usually pretty rare.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually having a director sit in with their VFX crew all the time is not not always possible. But a lot of times it is more too many cooks in the kitchen because everybody has their own viewpoint. Everybody has what they want to say about it,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you can streamline that, the better. So you generally would have an overall post supervisor who
Mm-hmm.
fields the notes from everybody and puts it on. But some projects can't always afford that. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
kind of deal directly with the clients. What I do is freelance work a lot. And if I'm working for a company, usually they'll have somebody to do that. But oftentimes I'm working directly with the client
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And it makes it easier in some ways, but also sometimes it's nice to have somebody to filter the
Right.
notes and interpret them.
That's very helpful. Because you said on a do you ever get like a director and a producer or something similar, like disagreeing on what they want to see? Like, how do you kind of parse that out?
Yeah, oftentimes it's not very often. Usually everybody's on the same page from what I've worked in, but a lot of times the producer will overrule the director because the producer has the money. They're the
Hmm.
ones who are selling the film, they're the ones who are funding the film.
Right.
So the director can say what he wants. The director can say, I love this. This is beautiful. And the producer's like, nope, sorry, can't
I
do
don't like
it.
it. Wow.
And it sucks, but it happens. It
Hmm.
doesn't happen super often on most of the projects I've been on lately.
Hmm.
I've been pretty lucky on that front, but it does happen.
Do you kind of prefer like, so you said earlier, like sometimes you have a director that has trouble kind of, putting into words their creative vision. How do you help with that?
Oh, it really depends on the director.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's about asking the right questions.
Hmm.
If you kind of have an idea, like especially if you can call them directly or Zoom, it's a lot easier than sometimes over. We use a tool called Flow, Autodesk
Hmm.
Flow, which tracks all of our shots and they can leave reviews on it and everything.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. It's nice because they can put their notes in and they can annotate and we can see it. But sometimes it's better to just talk because we can ask those questions. Sometimes it's a game of literally like fielding the right questions. Like if they're saying, these mountains they just don't feel like integrated right, and you
Hmm.
say, how is the haze level here? Maybe put a little haze here, and you can
Hmm.
see how they react to that and kind of judge basically what
Hmm.
they're going. And sometimes you can guide them into articulating their vision a little bit better.
Gotcha. So you're trying to kind of just, is it pulling teeth sometimes, or is it actually pretty easy to fish that out?
Depends on the client. A
Yeah.
lot of the questions, I think most of the time it depends on who it is.
Mm.
Usually it's pretty easy. A lot of times, there's a client that I've worked with, a very low budget, small stuff.
Hmm.
He always brings us little small shots. He does these horror short films, and he's really
Hmm.
cool. He's one of those ones who knows what he wants. Sometimes if he doesn't articulate it, it's easy to talk with him and get that
Right.
out. So I like that a lot. But other times there's, you know, like shot with 17 versions, for example. He keeps coming back with his note is basically it just doesn't feel integrated. We don't know what that means. That could mean
Right.
anything. That could mean, he doesn't like a mountain. He doesn't like one of the tents again. And technically, as my job, basically, my role in this show is a compositor. So my job is
Hmm.
basically assembling the whole image. It's like
Hmm.
Photoshop for video. So I'm integrating everything,
Hmm.
and I've got it to a place where I'm like, this looks good, and my our team is like, this looks good, but he's saying he doesn't like it, but he doesn't know how to really say that. So
Hmm.
it's going to be, um, thankfully, I have a supervisor on the show, so he can go and talk to the director and field that information
Oh,
and
very
say,
nice.
do what I was, just saying, which is asking the right questions, trying to get him to give his vision. Hopefully.
So how do you build a shot? Like it sounds like that's got looking through your demo reel, it was looking like a lot of moving parts put together. And you said compositor, like that
Yeah.
sounds pretty, is that self-descriptive or what's that like?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of self-descriptive if you know what like a composite is, a composite image. It's assembling a bunch of pieces. Building a shot depends.
Hmm.
Usually, uh, I mean, if you're doing with a big studio, right? If you're dealing with ILM, MPC, DNEG, they have different departments for all of these tasks I'm about to list, right?
Hmm.
So you'd have, match moving, which is the art of like tracking in things, so to make sure they
Hmm.
match the movement and everything. You have
Hmm.
match moving, you have modeling, you have texturing if it needs 3D.
Hmm.
Layout is when you assemble the scene.
Hmm.
Animation, uh, rendering. Sometimes you need like simulations of fire, smoke, water. That's effects, we call it.
Hmm.
And then everything gets kind of rendered out, and then a compositing is when you take that all and you put it together.
Hmm.
The process depends on the shot. Sometimes shots are just compositing. Oh, also paint work is important. Paint
Hmm.
is, we call paint the removal of stuff, or if you need
Interesting.
a clean plate. So, for example, like Planet of the Apes, when they have the motion capture suits, they need a
Hmm.
paint artist to go through and paint those guys out. That's a
Ah,
painstaking process.
right.
You got to paint everything out so that it leaves the compositors and animators a clean slate to basically put the ape in.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need what's called rotoscoping, which is, you know, some people find it relaxing. My partner finds it relaxing. I find it to be absolutely tedious.
Hmm.
It's basically just tracing the outline of some of anything in the scene. You're basically just moving points around.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to cut out hair. That's always fun.
Oh boy.
But all of those things come together into the final shot.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need less. Sometimes you need all of them. So it really just depends on the shot and what the uh, expectations are.
Have you ever been given like a task where it's like, I need you to assemble like, a 2 minute long take, and you're
Oh,
you're in charge of compositing that or something? Is that have that ever asked of you, or what's that like?
yes. Oh my gosh. There's one shot I remember from a few years ago. It was it was for one of the Hallmark Showtime movies, and there were two characters walking towards camera. It was a walk and talk, right? The camera was in front of them, and they were walking towards camera, walking down the street. Well, that street needed snow. Uh, and it's funny, most of those shows are filmed in LA.
Right.
So they don't have real snow or anything. So they lay down snow blankets. And snow blankets, if they're laid down correctly, look pretty good. But sometimes they don't flatten them. So there's ripples, there's lumps in them, there's folds, and we have to basically paint those out. We have to, pardon me, we have to remove them. And then we have to add snow and augment it. And it's hard because that shot was like, it was like you said, it was like a 2 minute long take. And the entire thing was just going along this, and we have to track that. We basically have to 3D
Hmm.
track that because it can't just be 2D. You can't look like a card is just placed there. You have to make the
Right.
snow match. You have to do that. You have to add snow to trees. So that was a long and difficult shot. And I know that there's others that I can probably pull up that have it. Not really 2 minutes long, but in my demo reel, there's a shot of the house. That was a
Mhm.
full replacement. That had to be a CG replacement. It was a day for night plate, but we couldn't bring any details. So it was literally just rebuilding the entire house from scratch just for
Mhm.
that one shot to make it look like it was morning light.
Oh wow. How long did that take?
2 weeks, I think, which is actually considerably short if you really consider like, what Marvel sometimes can
Hmm.
do. They can spend upwards of like a month on a shot. Weta can for like Avatar, but we were working on an indie film, so it was like
Hmm.
we had 2 weeks basically at the end of this project to do that shot, and yeah, it was basically it was modeling, texturing, match move.
Hmm.
I was in charge of match moving and compositing that shot and texturing. My dad ended up doing the modeling part of it because he's a really good modeler, and yeah, that was a long shot, really difficult.
Yeah, I know. Way back when you telling me that, you how much have you learned from your dad? I feel like your dad's been a big. Has he been a big inspiration for you?
Yeah, I started out actually when in 2013 I was making Minecraft animations. I was using a little app called Minimator, and it was my first time ever really doing that. I'd watched like the YouTube people doing it. I was like, that looks cool.
Hmm.
I didn't have the smarts to learn Blender at the time or
Right.
Maya or anything, but I did little animations, and I thought, what could I do to make these better? And so my dad was like, "Hey, if you ever want to try After Effects, we use it for work. Uh, you can try it." So I did.
Hmm.
I added like little tweaks, color corrections, lens
Hmm.
flares, and stuff to my Minecraft animations. And then I eventually did more. I did tests of doing like one of the first things I learned, and what I always tell people who are getting into visual effects: learn muzzle flashes. They're really straightforward, but there's an art to them, and there's different pieces that go into it. And so if
Hmm.
you learn all of those, you kind of have like a variety of tools at your arsenal. So I learned those, and he was working at the time. He was supervising the Asylum, which is a
Oh
company
wow.
that did Sharknado, if you've heard of that.
Yes, I've heard of Sharknader.
So
Sharknader.
Sharknader. He had a few shots on one of the movies, the World War II movie they were doing, and they had to do a lot of muzzle flashes. So he was like, "Hey, here's some. What if I give you some money and you want to do some work. And I was excited about it. I was thrilled
Hmm.
about it. So I did that, and I learned a lot from that, and it just kept going from there. I worked with him for a while on I did like Sharknado 3, 4, and eventually I ended up branching off and doing my own thing later. But we still work together now.
Hmm.
We have a project going on right now that we're doing together. So
Hmm.
it's fun. It's good. He's inspired me a lot because I never really thought when I was growing up I would want to do what he was doing
Hmm.
until I kind of got my hands in it, and I was like, this is really fun,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy it. And yeah,
So, what's your favorite part about visual effects? Like, what was that thing that grabbed you way back when?
I I honestly, that's a hard question. Uh I think it was just being able to make something happen
Mm.
on a video or something. Do something that, you know, to make magic,
Hmm.
essentially. Like I love movies, I love TV, and I love, the effects and stuff. And just being able to have the skill to be able to bring those things to life is really kind of cool. And I started in a unique place because a lot of people, when they start out, they'll want to model or animate stuff like that.
Hmm.
I started off with the final step of the process in compositing. So my thing that clicked with me was I love the integration. I love making things look real. I love
Hmm.
faking images to fool the audience, not fool the audience, but to help the film. And
Hmm.
if they don't see my work, that's I consider that a job well done, and
Hmm.
I just enjoy it. I love it. There were times when I thought I would, you know, where I've gotten burnt out and tired, but
Hmm.
I always keep coming back to it because the satisfaction of completing a hard shot, or the satisfaction of having a finished result that looks that looks good to your eyes, it's like it feels good. And
Hmm.
that's it's a creativity thing, I guess.
Have you ever been given like, what was the most challenging shot you ever had to do? Was anything that really pushed you?
That changes a lot. I would say there are small things. A lot of times, the challenges of a shot are just like one piece of it that's really
Hmm.
hard. Like a tracking is hard, or the roto's hard, or you know the animation's hard. But I think the hardest shot that I can really point to is actually the opening shot of the demo reel.
Hmm.
It's a shot where there's a truck that's going in front of a house,
Hmm.
and it's at nighttime, and there are a ton of lens flares in this plate. Plate, by the way, just for you listeners, plate is
Hmm.
what we refer to as the footage, the initial footage that comes in.
Hmm.
We call it a plate. It comes from like film stocks and those times.
Hmm.
So the original plate had lens flares and stuff, and a whole green screen, and there was only the first half of the house built. So what I had to do is I had to take a CG render of that house. Not only I had to distort it to match because lens distortion was big. It was shot in
Hmm.
anamorphic,
Oh wow.
and had to track that, or not track it. I didn't have to do the tracking, but I had to do all the compositing. I had to tweak the colors, lights, everything, and there were like 7 different layers just in the CG set extension. And the problem was the tracking didn't line up. The side of the house slipped, so like the edge of the corner from the bottom piece, the real piece, did not align with the top. So I had to
Hmm.
manually animate that in every other frame.
Oh wow.
And then removing the lens flares, I mean, there was this big blue light that they had. We had to paint that out, and the lens flare crosses right in front of the truck.
Oh boy.
So I had to literally do a whole bunch of tricks and digitally reconstruct the front of the truck just to remove that lens flare. And I had to do it twice, and the lens flare went over the area that the CG was, a
Hmm.
different lens flare that we wanted to keep. So I had to take that lens flare, extract it, and cut it out from the plate, and then make sure it goes over the CG. That was probably the hardest shot. That took a very long time,
Hmm.
and was I'd argue it's definitely the most difficult shot I've ever done.
Wow. And so, speaking of shots, what are all the things that go into a muzzle flash? You were saying that's a good way to learn.
Oh, yeah, no. Let's get some water real quick.
Oh, yeah, I'll do the same. I'll start my
Yeah.
hydro flask.
Yeah, I got an old Jet Bros cup filled it with water.
Oh, very nice. Reduce, reuse, recycle, folks.
Exactly. So a muzzle flash, I love teaching with muzzle flashes anytime somebody wants to learn, because
Mm-hmm.
the first thing you do, the easiest part, is you learn how to take an image of a muzzle flash, a gun flare, and you learn how to position it into place on the end of the barrel. Then you learn how to blend it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
usually really easy. If you use Photoshop, it's like a blend mode. You set it to screen or add, and
Mm-hmm.
then you cut it to one frame. You learn how to trim it, to move with your layers or your nodes. And, you match it up with the timing of the fire. And then you feel good as a learner because it's like, oh, I just did something. And it feels validating. And that's something that small tangent. I feel like when people are learning and they're teaching, they always teach too many complex parts first, and so
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the time as a learner to really feel like you've made something. So if you give somebody who's never touched a creative software in their life the ability to do something cool like adding a muzzle flash, it feels rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
In your first hour of doing it, you've made something cool that's usually good. But yeah, you do that. You do some smoke sometimes, a shell casing flying out, and that you learn animation. You learn how to take the shell casing and make it go like that. And so you have like three different things that you
Mm-hmm.
learn just from doing this muzzle flash. Uh, and yeah, depending on how you want to go, interactive lighting, making the gun blow back like that.
Mm.
Sometimes use a static gun. And yeah, you just learn a lot of tricks from that. And it's always fun because you get to, and everybody wants to make an action movie. I think everybody in the visual effects industry that I've known has at least made one action movie short film at once that has a gunfight sequence in it. So
Yeah, how do you get that effect where it's like, a muzzle flash will like light up the room or light up the surrounding area? That seems like it's a really hard trick to pull off.
yeah, it depends. If they're smart, they'll do something on set.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but always, if you're gonna do it on set, try to have your effects people with you, because sometimes taking a light and just turning it on and off. If it's like a dimmer, then you have like 10 frames of a muzzle flash light going ooh, and it looks like a pulse rather than a
Mm-hmm.
flash.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in post, when we have to do that, a lot of times you'll take a frame and you'll basically just paint in the lighting. You'll so say it's firing off screen, it has to light up his face. That's where people are looking. Face, like the front of the hand,
Mm-hmm.
the parts of the arm. You just kind of
Right.
have to guess it. Sometimes you add like a little reflection in the eyes just for like one frame, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like that. Another trick that my supervisor taught me, which is really cool, is if you're doing an inside scene,
Mm-hmm.
cut out a version of the character as a shadow and light up the back wall. And that looks really good
Oh
because it's
wow.
like it'll cast a shadow and it reads really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, yeah. Usually, what's nice about doing interactive lighting with a muzzle flash is that, yes, you have to do a painstaking paint in, but it's always one frame. Muzzle flashes only last for one frame, unless you're doing like an automatic weapon, which then you have to do it every other frame. So,
Oh wow. Is it easier to do semi-auto, burst, fully automatic?
yeah, I would say semi-auto burst is easier. If you're
Mm-hmm.
fully automatic, if you have a character going you know,
Mm-hmm.
just aiming a gun like a machine gun wildly, you have to add shell casings to that. You have to add interactive lighting. You have to time your flashes. It's a lot of work when you do that. A muzzle flash shot is simple in theory, but can turn really complex depending on the circumstance.
Mm-hmm. So speaking about complex, you ever think about going to Minecraft animation again?
That's I don't know how the market is now. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the Minecraft movie might have juiced it a little. I don't know if that's setting the quality expectations or setting what they don't want, depending on how you view it.
Right.
Um, it's funny because I've never really thought about it, but I think it kind of would be fun to like do
Mm-hmm.
something like that with the skills I have now. Now I'd be using an actual 3D software to do the characters like they used to do. All the tricks, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it could be fun to do that if there's time.
So you said right now you have like a bunch of or you have a bunch of projects on your plate, or sometimes you've taken on too many projects on your plate. What's
Yeah.
that like?
When you have a lot of projects, the thing is that one of the things I'm most grateful for getting into this industry was starting out with some place
Mm-hmm.
like the Asylum. Because Asylum, Sharknado, they're not. You basically don't have more than a day to do every shot,
Hmm.
to do each shot you're doing sometimes. So you learn
Wow.
to work fast. You learn to
Hmm.
cut corners, but cut the right corners.
Hmm.
Still preserve the artistry. And
The
obviously, like,
artistry of Sharknado.
yeah, exactly. The artistry of
Yeah.
Sharknado. Uh, that's a statement. Um, but when you do a lot, organization's important. You
Mm.
know, organize your folder structure, organize your files, organize your database, and update everything. Make sure it works because if you lose organization, it's really hard to kind of get back into that.
Hmm.
So when I was working, it was four different projects. It was only overlapping for like a week or two, which was good. But I was just prioritizing, all right, three shots from this I can do. I can work
Hmm.
on this shot from here. Uh, and when I have time, I'll do the least important. And you just want to structure it in like what's most important, what has the expectation to deliver something now.
Hmm.
And thankfully, two of the projects had lenient timelines, so I was able to put those on the back burner and do minimal for those. But
Hmm.
it's just a mental thing, it's
Hmm.
stressful when you have so many different places expecting. And it's nice because the dollar signs, a little mercenary. The money can be good, but it's not worth the mental
Yeah.
capacity. Even if you're smart and you know how to
Hmm.
optimize your workflow, it's just not worth it. I'd say two projects max, uh, with room for a third if it's like something I'm doing for a friend or something
Hmm.
that can be done for fun in the evenings pretty simply.
Right. And so, what you said you've worked on Sharknado. What are some other projects you've been involved with?
I'm glad you asked. Everybody always stops at the Sharknado and goes, "Oh, it's like what?" One of the ones some people will know. My dad and I. So my dad used to work at Foundation Imaging, which was one
Hmm.
of the early visual effects studios into digital effects. And some of the people he worked with there were tasked with doing a remastered director's cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh wow.
They were uploading that to, or they were upscaling that to 4K. They were remastering some of the visual effects, and they ended up giving us a piece of the pie, which is really, really, really awesome. We basically got to work with the original scans, digitally scanned of the plates that they had,
That's
and
super
we were
cool.
doing things like fixing some of the stuff that didn't hold up. Matte
Hmm.
lines. Matte lines are like a black outline around something.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, when you're working with film back in the day, it was like easy to get those. We were moving those. We were doing little fixes, little tweaks, and it was fun. That was a proud one to work on.
Hmm.
Recently, I've done. There was a historical drama called The Performance, which is really good. I worked on some stuff for Netflix. Dead to Me season 3.
Hmm.
We had a bathtub crash through the ceiling, and that was a practical stunt. And I had to tie that together with the plate of the characters and stuff. It was really cool. Shantaram on Apple TV was a good one. And one of my favorites, two shots I did for The Offer, which was a show about the making of The Godfather. And that
Oh
one
wow.
was really cool because it's always cool when you can work on a project that's tied to a property that you like.
Hmm.
Not everybody gets a chance to work on like Star Wars or Star Trek, and I was happy to be able to at least check off the Trek and The Offer. I love The Godfather, so it's
Hmm.
like having two shots, even if it's a show that's later and not attached to that completely. It's still kind of cool, and it feels good
Yeah.
to have that kind of work.
Is there any kind of like dream project you'd have, dream property you would get to work with besides Star Wars, of course?
Yeah, I know Star Wars would be awesome. Um, that's a good question. I guess I could think of Dune. Uh,
Dune.
the Dune movies. I've thought about it. I've literally thought about moving to Vancouver and trying to apply to DNEG,
Oh
work
wow.
on the Dune movies. Uh, but it's like I'm pretty content with where I'm at right now, work
Hmm.
wise, and freelancing. It gives me opportunity to travel and
Hmm.
visit my partner, visit my friends. So it's like I haven't like made the life choices to do that, but I would love to work on Dune. I That movie when it came out in 2021, That inspired and rejuvenated a lot of my excitement for the crafts.
Oh,
Just
very nice.
it was just some of the best visual effects that were so well in service of the story, and I would
Hmm.
love to have a part of that, even if it was a small thing.
Yeah, I'll say this: like the Doom Part One and Part Two were. I'm glad I got to see Part Two in theaters because that was
Oh
one of the
yeah.
coolest movies I've ever seen. Just visually, it just looked so cool, especially with it's one of the first shots, I think. But when you have the Harkonnens floating down from that,
Oh
you know what I'm
yeah.
talking about? It just looks so
Uh-huh.
alien but so cool.
The
Uh,
eclipse lighting. That was so
yeah,
good.
yeah. It's just cool how it can kind of elicit that feeling.
Hmm.
Visual effects has that kind of power.
Yeah, it does. And that's part of the reason I love it too, is that you can basically, and I feel guilty in some ways that I haven't made as many short films.
Hmm.
Because it's like I have this power to bring my ideas to life, but I can make an audience feel a certain way, but I haven't really done that with myself. But I've been helping others do their visions like
Hmm.
that, and I just love the power of that. It's like anything is possible in visual effects. If you want something to be done, it can be done. Uh, it's just when it comes to work wise, do you
Hmm.
have the money to pay for it?
Right.
Pardon me, has a timeline, but like the power to elicit those emotions on screen. And like some people would say that CGI, has gotten to a point where like the wonder's gone. I
Mm.
disagree. Watching movies like Dune, I mean, you just saying that elicited a response from
Yeah.
you. It's like it doesn't mean that you're wowed by the visual effects necessarily.
Hmm.
If you're wowed by the story, then the visual effects have served their purpose and they've made
Hmm.
it possible. And I'm content with that. I don't need to be breaking any boundaries and you know doing something nobody's done in visual effects. I'm happy just making the stories as good as they can be.
Do you ever see like some visual effects and you're like, I don't know. I don't know how that turned out.
Yeah, sometimes I see my own and I'm like, oh, looking back on any work older than like 3 or 4 years, it's like, oh
Mm.
boy, oh, how did I let that pass? But
Yeah.
a lot of times I do. It's important to keep in mind when you're watching movies like that or shows when you see that, like factor in the realities of the production.
Hmm.
Is this ILM Star Wars where it's like you have really no excuse, or is this an independent film
Right.
where they probably had a shoestring budget? Uh, and it's like it's funny though when we watch movies, my dad and I, my partner and I will sometimes ooh cringe at it and we'll
Hmm.
dissect it a little bit.
Hmm.
We'll do our own mystery science theater performance for it. But it's all in good fun
Hmm.
and recognizing that, yeah, the reason why that probably happened is because something got cut short.
Hmm.
You couldn't refine that. You had to move on to the next thing. And so it's never really, I don't ever really blame the artist. I blame the circumstances,
Hmm.
because any artist who's an artist will with given enough time can produce flawless results. It's usually just time and
Hmm.
restrictions that make it difficult for them to achieve that to perfection.
Do you ever run up against that where you're like under deadline and you can get it right, you just don't have enough time?
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. We say the phrase "kill your darlings" a lot,
Hmm.
um, and a lot of times we'll leave a shot. Our ideal goal sometimes when we come into those projects where it's like we know there's not enough time at the end is just get it to 80%.
Hmm.
It'd be nice to do this final tweak, but sometimes you have to let it pass. And most importantly, and another thing we learned from Asylum and I've learned from like network television stuff is what is the eye focusing on? What's the
Hmm.
most important thing to get right? Like if you're doing a set extension, uh, where's the viewpoint? Where's your audience going to be looking? You're going to be looking
Hmm.
at the castle on the hill. They may not notice that the little goats in the farm in the bottom left hand corner don't move, besides one of their head moves up because you had to animate in 2D.
Hmm.
And it's that sort of thing where it's like, can you get it there? If you can, you're good. And usually towards the end of a project when there's not enough time or whatever it is, it'll just be it'll be a crunch no matter what, but you'll have to prioritize and kill your darlings. Do I want to
Hmm.
spend the time to do this perfectly, or should I do it? You know, uh, my supervisor has a great phrase: "Good, fast, cheap." Now pick
Hmm.
two,
Hmm.
and It's where it's rules to live by. So yeah, it's I don't like it when things come to a crunch. Sometimes I'd rather massage a shot to perfection, but
Hmm.
sometimes you just got to make sure is the overall oil painting reading correctly? Can
Hmm.
you generally see that this is a landscape,
Right.
even if you can't look at the individual flowers?
Hmm.
And that's sometimes what we have to do.
You earlier you mentioned that it's about cutting the right corners. Sometimes you have to, and it's about cutting the right ones. What kind of corners are you talking about? What's that mean?
Yeah, well, sometimes if you're really, really tight, like asylum deadlines and stuff like that, generally you cut a lot of corners. We say blur it, shake it, ship it. Lens, or if you can't bear it, flare it. Glenn Campbell, the late Glenn Campbell, who used to supervise there,
Hmm.
good person. He passed too soon.
I'm
He
very
used to
sorry.
say that. Yeah, it was hard, but
Hmm.
he used to say that too. But on general, the things, one of an example I would say recently, if you want to do a set extension, right? I keep going back to set extensions. I do a lot of those. Sometimes it'd be nice to do a 3D model of the castle.
Hmm.
It'd be nice to do 3D models of the cars driving in, but sometimes you have to just do a 2D matte painting tracked into there. It gets the same idea across, it gets a story across. That's a corner cut. Another thing, actually, and this talk goes into current things a lot of current discussion. Sometimes, say one of the things we talked about earlier, rotoscoping, right? Cutting
Hmm.
out things manually. Sometimes you can't afford to do that for every single part of a shot, every single
Hmm.
shot. So one of the things you can do is you can try to pull like a key. Say, for example, this was something I did once. Say there was actors walking in front of snow, right?
Hmm.
And you need to put something there. You can do what's called a luminance key, which does the difference of like if their pants are dark and the snow is white, then you can do a kind of a rough key where it's like the
Hmm.
contrast difference. And sometimes you'll do that. And sometimes one of the things we do nowadays is we'll use some like AI accelerated machine learning. I'm going to use the phrase machine learning. I think AI is a
Yeah,
little bit of
it's giving it
it's
too
a
much credit.
it's giving it too much credit. Machine learning tools to do things like
Hmm.
rotoscoping and cutouts. A lot of times they're not perfect. They're
Hmm.
people will ask, is it industry standard? Is it going to replace those jobs? Not for a while, but you can do like a cutout of a basic person running sometimes with AI, and you add enough motion blur, it'll work, and that's cutting the right corner. In an
Hmm.
ideal circumstance, you would do it manually or hire somebody to do it manually. But
Hmm.
when you're pushing on the clock and you only one artist, you have a limited budget, you got to do what you got to do. And I think that's an example of cutting the right corner sometimes.
Wow. And earlier you mentioned the industry or the visual effects industry. Something is on strike. Someone's on strike right now, and that's affected you guys. Is it the VFX industry or what's going on?
No, so last year there were, I think, I'm a little fuzzy because I think it happened the year before too, a little bit.
Yeah, I
I
remember
think it
the
was like
SAG after stuff and all
that was
that.
it. It was a
Okay.
SAG after strikes, the writer strikes. They went on strike and it rippled throughout the industry.
Hmm.
There was a lot of it was a downturn in work, and I was actually my people in my circle. Some of us were really lucky in
Hmm.
getting a lot of the indie stuff. But I also know people who weren't as lucky. I
Hmm.
think Technicolor was a whole studio that shut down because of it.
Oh wow.
Or they had Cinesite. They had another. I want to say it was MPC, but I could be wrong. I don't think it. Don't take that with a grain of salt. I don't remember,
Hmm.
but one of the studios shut down because of it. And even on my end, on the low, the indie low budget end, I was still seeing cuts from it.
Hmm.
Like I worked probably half as much as I last year than I have in these last couple months this year. So it was on a pause. Like they weren't producing movies for a while.
Hmm.
Suddenly there's no post work for a majority of time, and work was much more
Hmm.
limited. But this year it's come back a little bit. It's hard to say how things will affect it moving forward. Either
Hmm.
more strikes if they happen, or some of the current economic, political stuff
Right.
certainly impacting the film industry.
Hmm.
So we'll see what happens.
So will Trump's order that all movies need to be made in America, 100% in America, does that affect you guys, or is that even a real concern?
That is a really, really good question. It's been debated a lot. I think for one, it's going to be very hard to track that
Right.
because movies have so many different parts. If you consider the amount of work that's done in just visual effects,
Hmm.
match move, tracking, modeling, animation, roto, paint, compositing, and everything, oftentimes even those will be like shipped out. Sometimes, if you need roto to be done, it'll be sent to India or
Hmm.
Singapore, and that like a house will do that, and they'll send it off to another house because it's better to keep your artists working on the creative stuff so that and something like rotoscoping goes elsewhere. Um, so it's going to be hard to track like how much is made in what is made in America mean? What's the
Hmm.
definition there? Is it shot in America or is
Hmm.
it finished in America? And I do think the potential for like impact, a positive impact, is some would say is remotely plausible. I think it's a little ridiculous myself because movies are never. What are you going to film everything in America? Were you going to film something taking place in France and
In
Italy?
America. Yeah.
It just doesn't really make much sense in my opinion. But we could see what happens. I mean, it
Hmm.
could affect us. It could not. I think they just need to clarify more what "Made in America" means
Hmm.
because right now it's right now. No, I don't think anybody knows.
Right. It's too broad. It's not specific.
Yeah,
So, I gotta ask, what you been playing recently? What you
playing
been?
like
Well, yeah, video games. What you been running?
oh man, I haven't had a lot of time to video game, unfortunately. Uh, but Overwatch has been fun. That's been, every now and again, maybe like twice a month at this point, which is sad. I'll hop on with friends and do some
Hmm.
Overwatch. My partner and I, though, we played through a game series called We Were Here.
We were here. I never heard of
It's
it.
a, it's really fun. It's like a puzzle game. It's a puzzle game that's like a co-op puzzle game. It's good
Hmm.
for like, a friend or a partner. My friend, my buddy Elijah and I played it a while
Hmm.
ago, but I've been replaying it with my partner, and it's like it's fun. It's fun. It's a fun game. We took times in the evenings to play that a little bit. It's just kind of nice to decompress.
Hmm.
Hard to sometimes jump into like a competitive online game
Right.
after tensing up for work for a while.
Hmm.
So it's just
You can tense even more in Overwatch. Gotta guard that
exactly
payload.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh man.
Yeah. I've actually been replaying Destiny a lot recently. Yeah,
Really?
dude. I
Okay.
can't walk away from it fully. I don't know if it's cost time sunk fallacy,
Sunken
or
cost fallacy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or if it's I just can't find what it offers anywhere else. But there's something about it, man. I don't know. That was the
Yeah.
game during COVID, so
Right.
been biting me back recently.
That's cool though. That's a fun
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, no, I always really enjoy. I'm actually playing through the first one for like the first time ever, and that's been quite a
Oh
treat.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, it has a lot. It
Huh.
has a very different feel from the second one, just kind of
Yeah.
aesthetically, but also the gameplay is like a bit more weighted. Like you don't have those class abilities. Like you played Hunter, right? Like so
Yeah, totally.
you don't have the dodge anymore. It's just grenade and melee. That's it, and super.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. But if you ever get the chance, if you ever have time, you should 100% play Star Wars Outlaws.
Really?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a very pretty
Okay.
game. Yeah, the story's actually pretty good too. I think it's gonna be remembered as an underrated game, but it's very, very cool. I
I will
love.
say.
Or go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll finish your
Yeah,
thought.
I it felt like this is a dumb thing to say, but I felt like I was actually in Star Wars. Like
Oh man.
it hit all the right taste clusters. Like you would
Yeah.
take off in your ship, and then okay, well, I want to, fly through hyperspace from this planet to Tatooine, and then when you like engage your hyperdrive, it has like the two buttons and it says punch it. Like
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's got that kind
Got
of
that
extra touch in there.
tactile,
Yeah, yeah.
interactivity. I love it.
Hmm.
Okay, that's good though. I've heard mixed things about that game, but you're singing its praises, and I trust your judgment on it. I remember we used to play Battlefront. for a
Dude.
while.
Yeah, dude. Man, I miss Battlefront. Will Battlefront 3 ever come out? I pray to
uh,
God. I hope so.
I know, me too. I would love that. I would love Battlefront
It's
3
so
because
cursed though.
it
Like
is.
they had the original Battlefront 3 like so close to done that even like did you
Hmm.
see that a build of it leaked for the
I
Wii?
did.
Yeah.
It was good too. I mean, it looked really
Super
good.
cool. You can like take off and then fly into space and then fly back down and it's just super cool and unique and
Yeah,
haven't seen that done since. And that was done on like an Xbox 360 and a Wii. It was done on a Wii.
crazy.
Ugh,
And if they can do it, I mean, there's no excuse for optimizations. Like,
come
imagine what it would have
on.
looked like on like PC or
What?
something.
Like I play everything on a PS5 now. I went back to
Right.
console, and that's just even with PS5 is it's gotten everything I wanted to like graphically out of
Yeah.
video games.
Yeah.
I'm like I don't know how it can look much better. Like Cyberpunk 2077 is gorgeous.
Oh
Horizon
yeah.
Horizon Forbidden West gorgeous. Like these
Hmm.
games have such graphical fidelity, but at the same time, there's like gameplay doesn't feel like I'm playing anything else much different than an Xbox 360
Yeah.
game.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you can't, graphics do not make the game.
Mhm.
You can play a game with minimal graphics and get an amazing game experience that you remember
Exactly.
more than the most prettiest game.
Like Minecraft. Like that
Yeah,
game's not. Look
it's
where it
far
got
from
us.
real. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a prime example.
Yeah. So, do you ever think, taking some of those visual effects skills are those transferable between industries?
Oh, yeah, there is a lot of overlap. I would say it's in my department a little less. I mean, I'm a generalist, so I can do a little bit of everything. But I specialize in compositing.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, you don't really, what assembling a final image is not really how it works in games usually.
Mm-hmm.
Game cinematics different story, like
Mm-hmm.
the trailers and everything. But I'd say if you're a modeler or a texture artist or a animator, anyone who's doing the 3D side of it,
Mm-hmm.
generally you'll find those skills pretty transferable. Obviously you'll have to learn a lot of things,
Right.
but it'll be a lot easier for you to translate that than it would be for me, because my thing is making a final image look pretty. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing I specialize in. Getting that into a game, I can do that, but it's not the same deal. I think some of it does, like just general. For example, when you play certain games, they match what they do in movies a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if you have, depending on how you like to play a game, if it's a graphically charged game, you have things like bloom
Mm-hmm.
or flares and stuff, and those take principles of compositing, of like making the image look good, color
Mm-hmm.
correction, but it's far less important than say modeling and
Mm-hmm.
animation in a game world, I think.
Yeah, you actually reminded me. I was playing Mass Effect yesterday, and I don't. Have you ever played Mass Effect?
I've never have, no.
But it uses a lot of in that time where it's like you want to take in this vista. It uses a lot of like lens flare and bloom, and it's very pretty.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's
nice.
very beautiful. But do you think like I remember the jump from PS2 to like PS3, and then that
Yeah.
jump from to PS4, like how
Hmm.
much graphic. But it's like now it's kind of seemed like it's almost plateauing. Do you think that's an accurate read? Like I'm a layman, I don't understand anything about creating graphics. You know?
I I think it's hard to, from what I've seen. Again, that's kind of a different facet of the industry than I am, but I feel like it's not so much that it's plateauing in the sense that nothing more can be done. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just in the sense that nothing should be in some ways. And maybe
Mm,
that's a hot take, but I think the more you push for better graphics and the more these companies push for just more fidelity, I
mm-hmm.
think there's less of a focus on optimization and making the game run well,
Mm,
because not everybody can afford, high end, hardware.
mm,
Consoles, I think, will make a resurgence because of that.
mm.
But like games now, it's like 130 gigs for a game,
Right.
and it's that sort of thing where it's like, is it really worth all the extra data? Like Red Dead
Mm,
Redemption 2 is 120 gigs, but that game is so well and fully complete and
Hmm.
vast that like you feel like it's worth it, and it's kind of a take in the Vista style. But
Right.
I don't really see a reason why Indiana Jones and the Great Circle should be 140 gigabytes, or
Right.
why Destiny 2 should be
It's
like
at one like
100
it's
gigs.
at like 190 right
Is it
now.
really
I
one
think yeah, it's something insane.
crazy?
Yeah,
But
like
again, it's
Battlefront
like
2 is also 100 plus. Like a lot of those
yeah,
games, they're just so big.
yeah. And sometimes I it's cool as somebody who appreciates good graphics,
Hmm.
but it's also you're gonna put a lot of people out of being able to enjoy those games because well they're big, and you know what's gonna happen when you want to install the next latest greatest game, well that big
Right.
game's gonna be uninstalled. And I think that removes people coming back and playing it
Hmm.
more often, you know. So I think it's not gonna plateau. I think they're trying to do a lot with AI now,
Hmm.
like Nvidia's AI
Hmm.
upscaling and denoising. I think it's I think there's potential to refine what we have now. Um, but I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll have to see what happens because,
Hmm.
especially if things like tariffs go into play, graphics going to get more expensive, hardware is going to get more
Right.
expensive. So how much are people going to be wanting to play these games? And the fact
Hmm.
that they're being priced now upwards of 80 to
Hmm.
$100, even Nintendo. So it's like
Hmm.
everything's going up in cost. So you really need, and more technology means you need the latest greatest. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the gaming industry.
Yeah, what do you think GTA 6 is going to be priced at?
120. I'm pretty certain that's gonna. I feel like that's definitely going to be the starting price for it.
Hmm.
With the amount of time they've sunken into it and the amount of well hype and fidelity around it, they're going to charge that, and they're going to get away with it because people are going to buy it.
Hmm.
Everybody's going to be interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how high they could push it. Like, I would be shocked if it's. I'd be very surprised if it was 60. I would be less surprised if it
Oh
was 70, because 70 is like kind
yeah,
of normal now. It's pretty standard.
yeah,
80 plus? Oof.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a pricey game.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that it's. I wouldn't say that it's like necessarily the kind of game that's like going to be. How do I put this? I think it'll be worth it for those who are really interested.
Hmm.
But I don't know how I feel about the casual gamers. I would consider myself more of a casual gamer when it comes to that game because
Hmm.
I have a select few games I like to play and a select limited amount of time to play games.
Right.
And I feel like I'm gonna want to wait for GTA 6 until it's been out for a year or so. You know,
Right. And it's like 20 bucks now instead of 100 something.
right? I mean, like I don't know if it'll ever go that low,
No,
but if
yeah,
it
we
goes
can
on
only hope for the
sale,
price. Right.
if it goes on sale, then that's a good time to buy it. That's what I did with the Indiana Jones game.
Hmm.
I really wanted to play that when it first came out. I just bought it like 2 weeks ago during one of the Steam sales.
I haven't played it yet. How is it?
I haven't played it either, so I'll let you know.
Oh, speaking of games that going on sale, if you haven't played Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order or Survivor yet, when they go on sale, heavily recommend them.
I have played those games. I love them.
Dude, Survivor's insane. Like I didn't
Mm.
know how you could top Fallen Order. Like story wise, I was just thinking of the narrative, and Survivor like somehow is just it blows it out of the water because I think it tells like a bit of a at least more interesting story for me.
Yeah,
Because then you see him kind of towards the end embrace the dark side, and I really wonder what's going to
yeah,
happen in this third one. Which is like I kind of hope
yeah.
that they're like, yo, Cal's playing for the other team now.
It
Maybe
would
he's
be
fighting the
interesting.
Empire, but if he's embracing the dark side, I think that'd be interesting. I
I
did
think
want
it
to
would
ask
be.
though,
Yeah.
do you think the visual effects industry, in the same vein of like graphics getting pushed, do you think that those can be pushed any further? Because like Doom Part Two, I don't know how you can make that look any better.
Right. That is absolutely one of those questions that is similar with the gaming industry. I think it
Mm,
depends on what's happening. One of the
mm,
things that's being pushed for a lot right now, I mean, there's the AI push, the machine learning push. I keep using the wrong terms.
mm.
The machine learning push is helping a lot, but it's more just optimizing what's already there. Um, but tech wise, one of the areas we're still falling behind are water and fire sims. Now, Weta's
Interesting.
been doing a lot, but a lot of it's space. It's
Mm,
like the limitations are the hardware and the literal space to be able to keep the data of like a giant simulation. So it's not that like, it can get, because it can get faster.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's tools like EmberGen or LiquidGen,
Mm-hmm.
they're entirely real-time simulators.
Wow.
And they're really awesome. And I've used them on projects before because they're just so much faster than like Houdini or some of the other tools out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're real time, but the problem is that when you need to save that, it's still a giant file size. So I think I remember like for the river sequence in one of the Planet of the Apes movies, there was like petabytes of data.
Oh
It
wow.
was it was a lot. It was a lot, and that was just for one scene. And so it's like I think the limitations are going to be hardware more than they
Mm-hmm.
are, and AI stuff will help optimize. Or I keep doing it. I keep doing it.
Machine learning.
Machine learning will help optimize some of it, but it's not going to fully.
Mm-hmm.
It'll still, the tech will be refined, but the artistry exists now. You can do anything in visual effects.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing we can't do. Even like, for example, one of the hardest things to render is caustics, which
Mm.
is when you shine a light through glass and you know that like the light refracts onto the surface.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to render because it's expensive because it's such a computationally powerful thing. But
Mm-hmm.
even now, that's a lot easier than it
Mm-hmm.
was. And even without that, there are still ways to cheat it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the ability to do anything in visual effects exists. So it's really going to be to stand out in the world. It's going to be how do you put this technology to use?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make it easier to achieve those results? Um, yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Well, Joe, is there anything else you'd like to let my listeners, viewers know? What's on your mind? Tell me your
um,
deepest, darkest secret.
I would say when you watch movies, keep in mind that every single time you see a bad visual effect, there's a reason for that. It's a lot of times budget constraints, and we're all doing the best we can. And you know, you can totally look at my old work and tell me it's awful. I'll just tell you, yep, I know. I'll feel the same way. Wish it could be better, but it can't. And yeah, just have a night. Just like if you're somebody who's working in the film industry, I guess is the last thing I would want to put out there to the world. If you're in the film industry and you're going to be working, making movies or working with visual effects artists, communicate well. Understand that get the idea across first, get the clear vision across first, and we can help you achieve that the best of its abilities. Make sure that vision's locked in from the get-go, and we'll make magic.
That's awesome. Gotta lock in that vision, bro.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You gotta lock it in.
Mm. Well, Joey, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Everybody else, thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode.